the IDF carried out a firestorm of airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon over the last 24 hours after just a few days of quiet on the northern border. And this comes as the United States Congress is considering steps to increase the pressure against Lebanon's internationally recognized government, as it is becoming obvious to everyone that the Lebanese National Army will not disarm Hezbollah. At the same time, Lebanon is pleading with the Iranians, trying to bring an end to this war. And we'll take a deeper look into all of this. And in the Gaza Strip, the terrorist organization Hamas is threatening publicly that there's no country that will be able to disarm their weapons from the Gaza Strip. So, did Hamas really manage to regain its power in Gaza? How many terrorists are in its ranks after 2 years of war? What is going on with all the executions and the tax collections? And how many usable tunnels do they still have in the Gaza Strip? Today, we will bring you the whole truth about how Hamas is managing to empower itself and return to ruling the Gaza Strip. And further afield, IDF representatives warned that Iran is producing ballistic missiles at a very, very fast pace. And a second round between Israel and Iran is only a matter of time. I repeat, a war between Israel and Iran is only a matter of time. But are the relations between Egypt and Israel warming up? El-Sisi is ready to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but only if Israel meets one condition. We'll tell you what it is later on in this report. So welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm Yair Pinto, bringing you all the truth about what's happening here in Israel. So let's go over the main topics from the last 24 hours before we dive into the details. After a few days of quiet on the northern border, the IDF struck infrastructure of the Hezbollah terrorist organization in several areas in southern Lebanon overnight between Monday and Tuesday. The compound that was struck served the Radwan forces to train terrorists for planning terrorist plots against Israel. In addition, military buildings and a launch site of the organization were struck, and we'll bring you all the details very shortly. And in a related story, according to a bill that Congress will vote on this week, Defense Secretary Hagstech will have to present opinions to suspend assistance to the Lebanese army if it is determined that it refuses to act towards disarming the Hezbollah terrorist organization. And against the backdrop of talks of an arrangement, the Speaker of the Lebanese parliament approached Iran's supreme leader requesting religious permission to hand over the organization's strategic weapons in exchange for ending this war. That's a very strange development, if you ask me. Tell me what you think about this in the comment section on this video. And meanwhile, the European Union is trying to gain a foothold in Lebanon and is considering strengthening the Lebanese police and also allowing the army to focus on disarming Hezbollah. A review mission is expected to arrive in the country at the beginning of 2026 to examine assistance in advising, training, and also in equipment. And elsewhere, 2 months into the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, Israel controls the strategic areas, but Hamas insists on keeping its weapons, and the IDF continues to operate to locate weapons and tunnels while applying pressure to bring back the remains of late soldier Ran Gurali. However, a worrying report has just surfaced giving details about how Hamas is recovering very quickly after the Israeli withdrawal through a series of brutal executions, tax collections, and usable tunnels. The issue of disarming Hamas will be at the top of the agenda for the upcoming White House summit between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the United States President Donald Trump. And meanwhile, Qatar and Turkey, in coordination with Hamas, are trying to persuade the Trump administration to agree to an idea of storing Hamas's heavy weapons or handing them over to Egypt and the Palestinian Authority as part of implementing phase 2 of the Trump plan, and Israel strongly opposes this idea, and the issue will be decided at the Trump-Netanyahu meeting in the United States of America. President Trump is also working to convene a trilateral summit with Netanyahu and with Egyptian President El-Sisi at the end of this month. And political sources note that the condition the Americans set for holding the summit is the approval of the gas deal between Israel and Egypt. However, the main threat to Israel has returned. This is no longer unverified rumors and half-bites of information, as the IDF representatives warn of a war with Iran at the horizon. And last Friday, the Revolutionary Guards reported a large-scale drill in the Persian Gulf that included a massive launch of cruise missiles. The naval arm emphasized that the exercise focused on increased use of artificial intelligence and was presented as proof of the uncompromising spirit of the resistance against any foreign threat. Though it seems even that the Iranians don't understand what that means. And earlier this month, Iran held an international military exercise in Azerbaijan and is producing new ballistic missiles despite all the damage to their production capability during the 12-day war in June. So as you can see, we have a lot to talk about today. So let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report, bringing you all the truth about what's happening in Israel on day 795 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are operating under the control of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. Just a moment before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth, because we are at a stage where it's hard for us to distribute our content. The algorithm isn't exactly cooperating with news from Israel. So we need your help in order to share this video with as many people as possible. So you can do that by liking this video, leaving a comment, and making sure to subscribe to TBN Israel YouTube channel so that we reach more people around the world with what's happening in this land. So, in the last 24 hours, the IDF destroyed a secret Hezbollah training camp meant to prepare Adwan Force commandos for a future invasion into Israel. A recently restored launch site for rockets was also hit and then destroyed. And the Lebanese media portal El Mayadin, affiliated with the terrorist organization Hezbollah, reported strikes in the Mount Safi area and in the El Tufa district. For its part, the Israeli Air Force announced that it launched a wave of strikes in Lebanon, also north of the Litani River, as part of Israel's enforcement actions against Hezbollah's military buildup. In addition, military buildings and launch sites of the terrorist organization Hezbollah were struck to prevent the use of advanced terror plots against IDF forces and against the State of Israel. So let us be clear. All the targets that were struck and the conduct of military training in preparation for activity against the State of Israel constitute violations of the understandings between Israel and Lebanon and a threat to the State of Israel. So the IDF declared that they will not let the security of the people of Israel be jeopardized by terrorist elements in Lebanon. And in related story, the deadline set by the United States for the Lebanese government to dismantle Hezbollah is approaching rapidly. And the United States Congress is already preparing to increase the pressure. And this is according to a report on Monday by the El Arabiya news portal. And Congress will vote on a bill this week to consider suspending military aid to Lebanon if it is determined that it refuses to disarm terrorist organization. According to the bill, United States Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will be required to submit a report on the Lebanese army's progress in disarming Hezbollah by the end of June. Under the warning, the report must include options to suspend assistance to the Lebanese army if it is determined that it refuses to act towards the disarmament of the terrorist organization. So with this in mind, the Trump administration officials are pressing the Lebanese government to move forward with disarming Hezbollah, and a series of senior officials have visited Beirut in recent months. However, the terrorist organization refuses to give up its weapons, and there does not appear to have any significant progress in this issue. However, there are signs that the Lebanese really want to put an end to the war and to actually get rid of the Hezbollah terrorist organization. For instance, this week, the chairman of the Lebanese parliament, Nabih Berri, asked Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei for a fatwa, that is an Islamic religious ruling that will allow Hezbollah to hand over the precision missiles and the UAVs to the Lebanese National Army as part of a deal to end this war completely. For its part, Israel sees itself as committed to American pressure and to the desire to give negotiations with Beirut in Lebanon a chance. But on the other hand, the European Union is also getting involved, and Reuters reported on Monday that the EU is examining options to strengthen Lebanon's internal security forces in order to allow the Lebanese army to devote itself to its central mission, which is disarming Hezbollah. And on that note, Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam said last week that his country wants to see a ceasefire monitoring mechanism plan a more significant role in verifying Israel's claims about Hezbollah's rearmament, as well as in verifying the Lebanese army's work in dismantling the organization's infrastructure. When asked whether this means that Lebanon would accept American and French forces underground as part of the verification mechanism, Salam answered in the affirmative. It's important to note that from the perspective of Israel and the United States of America, the deadline to decide the fate of Hezbollah's weapons north of the Litani River will arrive at the start of the calendar year 2026. However, the main obstacle to disarming Hezbollah stems from a lack of trust by the Lebanese politicians in American policy. It appears that the leadership fears that the United States will change its policy and throw them under the wheels of the bus, leaving Hezbollah to return. It is also important to note that support for Hezbollah has collapsed amongst Christians and Sunnis in Lebanon, and even amongst the Shiites there has been a significant decline in support following the destruction in the war. And finally, if the issue of dismantling the terrorist organization has not decided very quickly, practical steps will be taken to limit these weapons, and there will be a green light for Israel to continue the process of eliminating Hezbollah's military wing. So here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development, especially regarding Hezbollah in Lebanon. It seems that we are very close to a full-scale fighting in northern Israel. So keep spreading the truth, share our content with as many people as possible. Make sure to give a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to TBN Israel on YouTube so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, I want to talk to you for just a moment about one of our partners as we enter the Christmas season and our hearts turn to Bethlehem and to the birth of Jesus Christ, Yeshua. So I want to speak about my beloved homeland, the land of Israel. Israel has been through so much in the last few years, and recovery is slow. Its communities are trying to rebuild, families are healing, and tourism, one of the main engines of our economy, is still missing. However, Israel is healing, both by faith and also by building our capabilities and thinking about the future. But it takes time. It also takes a lot of prayer, and it takes friends like you. So when people ask me, how can I help Israel right now? To this I say, bless Israel this season. That's why I stand with Arza. Arza is an Israeli small business that I've partnered with for years now. Arza works with artisans in Jerusalem, in the Galilee, in Bethlehem, to create handmade pieces from the Holy Land. And each season, they gather these gifts into an Arza box. So whether you've never been here or you've walked these streets many times, it's a taste of the land of the Bible, the land of Israel. Many of the Arza team served in Israel's defensive forces in reserves near the front lines and are now rebuilding their lives. So when you purchase an Arza box, you bless Israel, you keep small businesses alive, and you help families rebuild. This year's Christmas box is called Nativity Night. It brings Bethlehem, that very holy night, into your home. So make sure to go to arzabox.com and use the coupon code TBNIL for an extra 20% off of your subscription. So bless Israel this Christmas. Support the people of Israel, Israeli artisans, small businesses, and bring the Holy Land into your houses. And now we're getting back into the news and shifting our focus to the Gaza Strip. So in recent days, it's been a bit hard to get a full picture of what actually is happening in the Gaza Strip beyond small pieces of information. So let's break down the situation, and together we will understand what's happening there and how we can pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Today marks exactly 2 months since the establishment of the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The IDF deployed away from Gaza City and parts of the densely urban area in the Gaza Strip and positioned itself in areas that dominate the coastal plain from the high ground further east. Under the agreement, the IDF's redeployment line is called the Yellow Line. The ceasefire agreement came after the military move the IDF that it carried out when it encircled Gaza City. This is where Hamas's Gaza City Brigade, the significant remaining fighting force for Hamas in Gaza, was positioned. The IDF succeeded in moving more than 850,000 people out of Gaza City, including unarmed civilians, men, women, children, and the elderly. So this move led to the collapse of Hamas's defensive line in Gaza City and exposed Hamas's Gaza Brigade to the IDF's activity, which then began systematically advancing from several directions and closing in on them. However, in recent days, the IDF has been required to operate in the Israeli area of the Yellow Line, as if no ceasefire agreement had been reached. Just over the weekend and also yesterday, a significant number of incidents were recorded in which terrorists tried to cross the Yellow Line in an apparent attempt to harm the IDF troops. But at the same time, the IDF continues to work to locate more and more weapons, tunnels, and Hamas infrastructure inside Gaza. The IDF understands that in the framework of the ceasefire agreement and second phase, if we reach it, it may have to vacate part of the area that it currently holds. So it prefers to dismantle the arrays that could in the future endanger the forces and also the communities surrounding the Gaza Strip. For its part, Hamas is reinforcing and refusing to disarm. In fact, just this week, senior Hamas official Khalil al-Haya claimed that Hamas demands to hold weapons for itself. In terms, they claim it's self-defense, but it is a complete contradiction to the 21-point ceasefire agreement that was reached just 2 months ago. So the coming days are expected to be interesting around the issue of the second phase of this ceasefire agreement. The Americans have plans to move forward, and the IDF will soon be required to close this wall, whether through an intense military move that will force Hamas's disarmament, or with the Americans together with the mediators applying pressure on Hamas to end this war. However, all of this raises a clear question. Can anyone really disarm the terrorist organization Hamas? To answer that, we need to ask what Hamas's condition has been since the ceasefire, because just before the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, Hamas was on its knees, almost crushed. Indeed, thousands of terrorists were eliminated, and the terrorist organization's weapon stockpiles, the rockets, the AK-47s, all of that was significantly depleted. Today, Hamas controls less than half of the Gaza Strip, with the remainder held by Israel. Hamas has hit very hard. All their terrorists, the leadership was almost destroyed completely, but they were not defeated yet. However, although the organization was significantly weakened after 2 years of war, Israel and the Arab security sources assessed that it is far from total defeat, and Hamas still continues to control key places in the Gaza Strip. And in fact, according to the Israeli security sources and a senior Arab official, Hamas has managed to regain its strength in the areas that it controls in the Gaza Strip. Furthermore, over half of the underground tunnel networks remains intact, allowing the organization hiding places and also storage for weapons. And speaking of weapons, although the rocket stock was shrunk, Hamas still holds small arms, RPG launchers, and also mortars. And finally, according to official estimates, Hamas still has 20,000 fighters, although most of them have not received much formal military training, but they can still hold a weapon and launch a rocket. And on the civilian level, Hamas's police forces have returned to the streets, setting up checkpoints and making arrests. Local businessmen have also reported that the organization is collecting taxes on luxury goods imported into the Gaza Strip, such as computers and solar panels, despite denials from official Hamas sources. So the organization is also taking a hard line against rivals. For instance, in mid-October, 8 men were executed in the central parts of the Gaza Strip in Gaza City in revenge for the killing of Hamas members. Hamas is also trying to exploit the momentum and reimpose its authority over the militias inside the Gaza Strip. So this week, it gave activists a 10-day ultimatum to surrender themselves in exchange for promises of amnesty. Militia leaders who spoke with Channel 12 News in Israel say that they are refusing to fold in the face of the threats, and some are issuing an ultimatum of their own. And amidst all of this, we cannot ignore another huge factor that decides what goes on in the Gaza Strip. About 600 trucks of humanitarian aid enters the Gaza Strip every single day due to American pressure, and despite warnings from security officials, and according to a report on Monday by the Walla news portal, these trucks will keep going inside. Sources in Israel warn that a significant portion of the goods are taxed by Hamas, and that's how they fund all their operations, which drives monthly revenues of millions of shekels. The result is a significant strengthening of Hamas's civil governance in the Gaza Strip. Also, the American pressure that leads to the entry of the trucks run counter to Israel's declared policy of weakening the organization, collapsing its rule, and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip. In the Southern Command, they point out that the current volume of goods even exceeds the Strip's natural capacity, which they say should stand at only 100 to maybe 150 trucks per day. And with that in mind, it's also important to point out that around 2/3 of the trucks are operated by the private sector, and only the remaining third by the United Nations and the aid organizations. So, according to sources in the security establishment, international aid organizations not only cooperate with Hamas terrorists, they also create chaos and struggle to expand their activity due to budget, bureaucracy, logistical, and internal organization problems inside the Gaza Strip. So according to assessments, the value of the goods of about 100 trucks per day effectively passes under Hamas's control, and the millions of shekels that are accumulated monthly are used to pay salaries to activists and to officials. There is no certainty that the money is actually transferred directly to the military wing, which benefits from donations and other income sources, but the security establishment notes that if the money reaches the clerks, the teachers, the doctors, it finds its way also to military operatives of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And in the security establishment, they warn that any future increase in the entry of trucks, and certainly the volumes similar to the target that is set by Hamas, it will serve the terrorist organization Hamas and deepen its control of the Gaza Strip. So the recovery of Hamas poses an obstacle to the Trump administration's plan to rehabilitate and also to demilitarize the Gaza Strip, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has declared that Gaza will be demilitarized and Hamas will be disarmed, the easy way or the hard way. So these issues are likely to be at the top of the agenda when Netanyahu visits the White House for a meeting with President Trump later on this month. It should be remembered that Qatar and Turkey, in coordination with Hamas, are pressing the Trump administration to agree to a soft outline that would include storing Hamas's heavy weapons in warehouses in the Gaza Strip or handing them to Egypt or to the Palestinian Authority without dismantling the terror tunnels and without denying the ability to continue clandestine rocket production. They present to the Americans a model like what was agreed to in the Northern Ireland area, where the IRA's weapons were put out of use but remained under the organization's control. So, for its part, Hamas is willing to talk only about a freeze in order to maintain its status as the resistance of the Palestinian people. But Israel strongly objects and demands full and immediate disarmament, warning, as long as Hamas holds the weapons, it controls Gaza and endangers Israel's citizens. This is the truth. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you all the truth about what's happening in Israel, and we invite you to continue and spread it with us. Share, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to send personal comments. Share it with people. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to your mayor. Say the truth to anybody who is willing to hear it. And make sure to subscribe to TBN Israel YouTube channel. That's how you help us reach more people with what's happening here on the ground. And now we are switching our focus to Iran, because on Monday, a closed-door discussion was held in the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defensive Committee in Israel with the participation of an IDF representative who answered questions from the members of the Knesset that were present at that meeting. One of the things that she told them was that Iran has returned to producing ballistic missiles at a high rate with the goal of restoring full operational readiness. Even now, as before the war, the IDF's concern is a barrage that includes hundreds of ballistic missiles at once. It's important to point out that following their devastating defeat in the 12-day war in June, Iran had the option to choose whether to shelve the aspiration to destroy the state of Israel and pursue economic rehabilitation of a country collapsing under a severe financial crisis. But they appear to be taking a different course. Instead of caring for the welfare of the people, their own people, the Ayatollah regime which rules Iran choose continued armament and are saying yes to war with Israel. Operation Rising Lions began with Israel achieving complete strategic surprise and paralyzing many Iranian capabilities. This was done mainly to create freedom of action for the air forces, the Mossad, and the military intelligence. And when the achievement was in its hands, Israel acted on two tracks to demolish the nuclear project and the ballistic missile project. Although significant damage was done to both of these projects in Iran, and this is according to increasing reports in the West, Iran is renewing its ballistic missile project, and Israel will not sit idle by in the face of a threat that proved itself in the 12-day war, when the entire nation sat in shelters and in ballistic missile threats with deadly warheads on their way to the Jewish homeland. This is including a direct hits on hospitals and on also strategic locations as well as civilian neighborhoods in the land of Israel. Only around 10% of the ballistic missiles, drones, and cruise missiles that were fired at Israel by Iran managed to penetrate our air defensive systems, while the Israeli Air Force achieved full air superiority over the Iranian skies and inflicted massive damage on strategic targets all over the country. In the months since, Iranians have suffered terrible hardships from the ongoing drought, air pollution in cities, and many other problems, but the regime has largely ignored this and remains focused on its obsession and its hatred against Israel. The Ayatollah regime and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps continue to devote most of their time, money, and resources to rebuilding the arsenal of ballistic missiles, sending a clear message that they haven't had enough and that they're ready for another round of conflict with the Jewish state of Israel. Furthermore, the large sums of money transferred to Hezbollah alongside the smuggling of weapons into Lebanon prove that Iran has not abandoned its murderous ideology. Lebanon is a theater that threatens all of us, but it must be addressed. But Iran must also be dealt another blow so that they won't pose an even bigger threat than what they posed in June in the last round of fighting. So the IDF representative who participated in this discussion at the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee warned that in Tehran, they are not only rebuilding the missile array, but doing so rapidly and resolutely, using older production methods and bypassing the severe damage that their manufacturing facilities have suffered in the war. According to the assessment, this development places Israel before a renewed and a tangible threat from Iran. And at the same time, Iran continues to display power on the military stage. So last Friday, the Revolutionary Guards reported a large-scale drill in the Persian Gulf that included a massive launch of cruise missiles of the Gaza 110, Gaza 380, and the Gaza 360 models, alongside a ballistic missile of the 302 model. So according to Iran's Press TV, this is a media portal in Iran, all targets in the Gulf of Oman were hit with high accuracy. The Revolutionary Guards Navy emphasized that the drill focused on increased use of artificial intelligence and was presented as proof of the unyielding spirit of the resistance in the face of any kind of foreign threat. So I'm very, very curious. What do you think about all of this? Is Iran showing the world an unyielding spirit of resistance? And if so, what are they resisting? It seems to me like they're resisting the opportunity to give their people a decent quality of life by devoting all their resources to a pointless and unnecessary conflict with Israel, which is a country that they do not share a border with, and no other natural source of friction. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section. In the meantime, it's important to remember that earlier this month, Iran also hosted an international military exercise with members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in East Azerbaijan province. Iranian media claimed it was a message of peace and friendship to neighbors, but none of Iran's neighbors seem to feel like that's what was going on over there. In the West, there are fears of a miscalculation that will lead to a new confrontation amidst increased warnings that Iran is building up its arsenal of ballistic missiles using older but still reliable methods and technology after losing their most recent developed production capability in the 12-day war between Israel, the US, and Iran. And according to sources familiar with the situation, Israel conveyed messages to Iran that it has no interest in striking again, but the response from Tehran was that Israel is lying. A senior European ambassador warned this week that although Washington is not expected to give a green light to Israel for a broad strike in Iran in the near term, an Israeli military action against Tehran could occur within the next year. In any case, the drills, the statements, and the reports of high-rate missile production paint a frightening picture that Iran is determined to rebuilding its military capabilities to pose a direct threat to Israel and to make clear that any attempt to harm it will be met with massive missile barrages. In Israel, they are watching closely, but the feeling is that the clock is ticking and that the next confrontation may be closer than it seems. And here, at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this matter. So keep spreading the truth, share, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to subscribe to TBN Israel on YouTube to help us reach more people with boots on the ground with what's happening around the world from here. And now, let's conclude today's report with a note of optimism. So the United States is pushing for a dramatic trilateral summit between President Trump, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi at the end of the month at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. But Egypt has a clear condition. Netanyahu must first approve a strategic gas deal between Israel and Egypt. The Americans see this deal as a central engine of economic diplomacy and a move that will strengthen the pro-Western axis in the region, bring Israel out of a diplomatic isolation, and bind Jerusalem and Cairo through shared interests, not threats. The sale of Israeli gas that will supply a significant portion of Egypt's electricity consumption will also create mutual dependencies. Egypt will have a direct interest in Israel's stability and its security, and Israel will have a key Arab partners against Hamas and against Iran. Sounds good, huh? After weeks of negotiations, the gaps in the gas deal have narrowed. And in Jerusalem, they assess that if there are no surprises, the summit will take place. For Israel, this is an opportunity to strengthen the alliance with Egypt, stabilize southern border, and build a regional reality in which economic cooperation weakens the terror axis. And at the same time, the Netanyahu-Trump meeting in Washington is expected to discuss Phase B of the American plan for the Gaza Strip, including security arrangement for the day after, examining an international force or an alternative governance mechanism in the Gaza Strip, and close coordination around the continuation of the operation and humanitarian reconstruction, all under American supervision and in cooperation with regional countries so as not to allow Hamas to regain its control. One more quick note to report. A storm called Byron, a massive weather system that has already hammered Greece and Cyprus with heavy rains and strong winds, will arrive in Israel on Wednesday afternoon. The storm did a lot of damage in Greece and Cyprus, so please pray that here in Israel that will not be the case. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this matter. So keep spreading the truth, share, follow us, and most importantly, pray. Please pray for wisdom to our leaders, to your leaders, because this is a very, very tough situation. Let's pray for all the innocent lives. It's the people of Israel, people of the Gaza Strip, people of Iran. Let's pray for all those that are affected by these terrorist regimes to have better leadership, but also to have God in their heart. Let's keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.